And welcome to the May 1st, 2024 meeting of the San Luis Obispo County Flood Control and Water Conservation District Water Resources Advisory Committee. I hope everybody, I had to read it. There's too much to memorize. I hope everybody's enjoying our spring weather. Yes. So we'll start out with introductions and welcome. Tom Burhan, 4th District Chair.
Christine Mulholland, Environmental at Large. Barry Green, Environmental at Large.
Jim Guthrie, City of Arroyo Grande.
Dominic Rock. RCB alternate.
Linda Chipping, RCB.
And Jimmy, environmental.
Jimmy Henderson, Healthcare, Water.
Services. David Prater, District 4, alternate. Lee Nesbitt, EPC. Steve Carter, Slow County Farm Bureau.
Okay.
Gregory Wall, Cattlemen's Association.
Alan Duckworth, 5th District. Lee Vio, Shining Resources.
John Winstead, Agawam.
ADP, St. Louis City Council.
Deborah Logan, Templeton, CSD.
Mary Van Roman.
Jim Green, Jim.
Brittany Howard, Water Resources Commission, Board.
Harold Wright, Slow County Public Explains. XE Water Resources Manager.
Isabella Garoni, City of Slow. And Fletcher, County Stormwater Coordinator.
Joey Style, County Public Works. Brendan Clark, County Public Works Committee Secretary.
Way in the back. And we have one person to come into the back there also, in the blue.
Matt Good, Golden State Water.
Okay, very good. How about folks on, Joey, anybody?
Yeah, we have a few folks joining us here. I see Mr. Jeff Edwards, Bishop Wilmore.
Yeah, Patricia Wilmore, Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance, Ag at Large alternate.
Yes, good afternoon. My name's Jeff Edwards, private sector Los Osos.
Okay, very good.
Oh, and one more.
Oh, one more?
Yeah, and good afternoon. This is Toby Moore. I'm the Water Resources Manager with Golden State Water Company.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. Moving on then to agenda item number 2, approval of the minutes of our March 6th meeting. Hopefully people have had a chance to review them. Anyone want to make a motion for approval or modification? Okay, second. Any discussion or corrections? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right.
Abstain, I was missing in action.
Well, welcome back. Okay, thank you. Very good. Oh, and staff did inform me before the meeting, we do have a quorum present today. I forgot to mention that earlier. So then we'll move on to item number 3, which is receive the update from county staff regarding the final draft post-construction stormwater guidebook.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here to receive an update. I'm Leanne Fletcher, the County Stormwater Program Coordinator.
Would you mind speaking of the mic?
Oh, it's not, the mic's not actually plugged in.
Oh, okay. So just move this.
Wherever I need to.
This is the mic.
That'll be super.
My position is housed within Public Works. I work across all county departments and all of our unincorporated areas. Wanted to give a brief update on this project. So I'm going to give a quick recap of what the post-construction stormwater guidebook is and why we have it. Some notable changes from the preliminary draft, and then our plan to roll it out and try to promote more consistency in the region and across the county. So the regional post-construction stormwater requirements were adopted in 2013 by our Central Coast Water Board. They exceed the state standards for treatment, retention, and management of post-construction stormwater. And what we have is a guidance document to help navigate how you integrate these features on your project. And so when we talk about post-construction stormwater, I want to clarify This is not the fiber rolls and things you see when something's under construction. This is the water that comes off your paved surfaces after you've finished building. And so the idea is to really try to mimic the watershed that was there before you built your building by capturing that water, infiltrating it, treating it, and making sure any additional runoff that comes off into the street is of good quality and isn't impacting our waterways. So why are we updating this guidebook? So the requirements rolled out in 2013 and our first guidance, our LID handbook, rolled out at that same time. In 10 years, there's been a lot of new technology that's come on the market, and we've learned a lot about how this infrastructure ages. We've learned a lot about maintenance. Our development perspectives and priorities have changed. We're seeing very dense infill. We're seeing less giant parking lots. And we really learned a lot over these 10 years about where infrastructure works, how it works, and how to make sure that it's aging in place and aging well and doing the things we need it to do. So our updated guidebook is going to address some of the new technologies, especially the ones we're seeing come in very frequently in plan check. We're going to have more specific guidance to help expedite the plan review process. And we're shifting the focus from this early kind of LID philosophy into the real world strategies that we're seeing really work for developments and integrating LID rather than just explaining what it is. So just some pictures of what post-construction stormwater management looks like in the wild, because I feel like it's best understood through pictures like this on finished buildings. So left side is a section of pervious pavers that are taking all the runoff, well, a decent amount of runoff from the roof of this building before it's going out into the parking lot. Right side is kind of the classic low level of difficulty, water the plants with the roof water. These are features that are on new county infrastructure. The animal services facility has a couple bioretention basins out front. This was during the winter when it was all full of water. Our Napomo Skate Park has a bioretention swale. It's taking all the runoff from the parking lot through those curb cuts in and treating it through the plants. This is the part that you don't see of this technology. So this is a during construction set of photos at a mini storage facility out near the airport. What you're seeing on the far left is the gravel bed that's going in for this infiltration feature. The center photo is a special blend soil matrix with sand and compost, which then you can kind of see in this last picture, they're stabilizing with rock where all of the storm drainage is going to come into this feature. Once it's built and aged, it doesn't look super fantastic, or well, not super exciting, I would say. It just looks like plants and rocks, but this feature is taking all of the runoff from the hardscape of this facility, treating it, infiltrating it, and only a very small portion is then overflowing into the storm drain system during major events. So that's really what this technology is meant to do, and what our guidebook is trying to kind of coach and help developers design for their projects. Some updates from the preliminary draft. I was here last year to talk about the preliminary draft and get people excited about this. We have comprehensive guidance for underground infiltration systems. This, you can't see it in the picture, but this is a perforated pipe. So this is basically a giant underground recharge system that's taking stormwater in and infiltrating it back into the ground. This technology has gone from being mildly popular to very popular in new developments, and we're seeing this come in a lot of new plans. And so what we've really tried to outline is our infiltration testing requirements with factors of safety to make sure that we're infiltrating and getting the rates that we need. Minimum requirements for water quality treatments and making sure that the water that's going into these systems has been adequately treated, that there's not trash that's going to plug up these systems or anything like that. And then setbacks from structures and groundwater. I will say that on the Central Coast, this would be the most comprehensive set of guidance requirements in the region. We've heard from Santa Barbara County that they're very interested in adopting a lot of what we've laid out. And I want to say that we are in no way trying to restrict these. This is a feature that's become very, very helpful in new development and making sure that we can get the infill and density that we need. But we want to make sure that we're protecting structures, protecting water quality, and making sure that these features are set back so that, you know, adjoining properties are able to use all of their usable space as well. Another new feature that we're adding, since the preliminary draft, is compost-based treatment for roadway drainage. So we're really looking for kind of lower maintenance water quality treatment options where you're not having to irrigate plants all year. And this idea or concept of using compost amended vegetated filter strips is consistent with Caltrans standards. They've had a lot of success with this in the region. The materials are all available locally, and it's consistent with the goals of using more compost in SB 1383. This is a picture, we're not treating a road here, I promise. This is a test slope at one of our county roads facilities where we put down a really thick layer of compost ahead of the winter. We did like 5 different treatments on this slope. I can tell you the compost treatment blew everything else out of the water, the amount of revegetation we got. So it is a great strategy, and we're glad to be able to offer this. Plant pellets. So another kind of change from where we started 10 years ago. There were very long lists of plants that you could plant in these features. And a lot of times we would see no plant specified because folks got overwhelmed or didn't know what to pick. And so we've made some shortened lists of things that we've seen grow really well, that are low maintenance. And so kind of just presenting the option where you can pick from a very simple menu, tell us in plan check, I want the commercial basic palette, and we will approve it and you can move on. Yep.
Are those native plants?
Yes, ma'am.
California natives?
California natives.
The risk?
Yep. California drought tolerant natives. And then one of the biggest lifts for us has been to put together 2 complete example projects. And so this is really going to be, I think, a very useful tool showing how, to walk through all of our templates, how to fill out these reports, what calculations we need to see, and illustrate these templates in use. There's 2 examples. One is currently under construction in the real world. The other is in plan check, but we're going to be rolling those out so you could, as an applicant, see exactly what we're looking for in these applications. We started this project in March of 2022 and thought we would be done last year. It's been a long couple of winters, so we've been held back a little bit. Our preliminary draft came out in the spring of 2023. Our final draft is currently in review at the Central Coast Water Board. So as soon as they've had a chance to look through it and give us some feedback, we're going to release it for public comment with the intent of officially launching this guidebook and training in the summer of 2024. So this summer. As far as kind of rollout, I talked a little bit about this, but this is available for adoption by the incorporated cities at their discretion. It's a guidance document. It's not a policy. We will, as we have in the past, give our forms, give our templates, and share guidance with all of the cities across the Central Coast if they would like them. We will be updating a lot of forms and templates. That we've learned is a transition period of at least 6 to 12 months before people roll over to new forms and new templates. So we'll be doing outreach on that element probably through the end of the year before it becomes required to use our new templates. And that is all that I have. And so I'm ready for questions. Yeah.
What do you mean by compost?
So, yeah, so we, Caltrans explains this so much better than I do. There's certified compost that's coming out of production facilities, namely one in Santa Maria. So they're combining green waste, food waste, all of these types of things into a very high quality, stable, organic compost. So it's treated, digested food waste essentially. So it's a soil amendment. And so
you mentioned that it would be covered in the top of the soil. Right?
It's not going to be used as much as a cover. It's going to be integrated into the top 12 inches. So yeah, less of a blanket and more integrated into the top 12 inches. Yeah. Yeah, dude.
Give guidelines for maintenance for what you would expect for them, 10 years from now when all those plants have grown in and they get started. Do you guys have guidance for what kind of maintenance?
We don't have that guidance. We require that guidance from the developers. So there is a requirement to have an approved operations and maintenance plan with the county for how you will maintain it. And that maintenance plan is developed by the designer for the project, because we don't always, we see lots of different combinations of structures, and so we as the county are not able to say, this is how you maintain every single thing. But we have forms that ask specifically, like, where would you get replacement plants for this? What is the replacement interval on this, type of feature? Who is the vendor who can help service this other type of features? So we have a template for what we want to see in a maintenance plan, but we don't specify what the maintenance frequency is. That's up to the designer.
When you're shoving a lot of water into the subsurface like you're doing on these projects, you've got a potential breakout issue. That is that presumably if there's a slight gradient, that water has to go somewhere. And you can't assume geologically that it's going to go straight down. So is there a soil survey or anything else to back up what you put where on between there and the discharge into a local stream?
Yeah, so two of the big things that we've incorporated on that are setbacks, right? From slopes, from waterways, from, utilities, from sidewalks, like we have setbacks now that we did not have before. So that's our big starting point, is to say, you may not put it here, it can be over here. And secondly, we are requiring in the soils report for the project or the geotech report that they attest to the suitability of the site for that feature, and that they've done infiltration testing to prove that it will work as designed. Yes, Eric?
Thank you. Yeah, I get the sense that the emphasis of this, not the entirety, but the emphasis of this is relative to reducing the physical impact of fast moving water, and not as much on any impurities that might be in the water, although they could be caught somewhere along the way and perhaps neutralized. A specific concern, and it may be as much during construction as post-construction, but it's certainly a concern. Have you noticed any trend line in the use of wood treated with copper arsenate? And are there special requirements for basically keeping it covered when it's stockpiled and things like that to prevent certain impurities from getting into the runoff from sites?
I'm not familiar with that wood treatment. Is that an exterior type of wood or an interior?
It's, you sometimes see wood with this sort of green.
The
tone
green
that's
wood,
used
okay.
in outdoor construction to keep critters from eating it and so on. And obviously, having it gradually degrade and what's in it released into the environment is probably not a good thing, but it seems to get very little attention. And so I was just wondering if it is getting attention in this process.
It is not getting focused attention within this process. We're not seeing it specified as a building material in private construction very often, I would say. I know there's a lot, and that's probably due to the requirements for disposal. Anytime I know, and I wish Mladen would hear, he would know better than me. The disposal rules for pressure treated wood have made it a challenging material to use and then replace or get rid of. So we're not seeing it specified on many plans at all, and we don't have special provisions for that material.
Thank you. So hopefully we're seeing less of it.
I think we are seeing less of it, and I can confirm with Mladen.
I was wondering if it could be, if that compound could have a TMDL perhaps. That'd be a way the water board is tracking it.
It would have to be metals and totals.
Yeah.
Does this apply to all projects that require a building permit in the county, for example, or is it like somebody's building like an ADU or something, something that small, would it be required?
So the threshold, there's a different threshold for residential, which is higher. So on a commercial development, the rules start to kick in at 2,500 square feet of impervious surface. For residential, the requirements don't really start to kick in until you hit 15,000 square feet of impervious surface, which we've seen people do. It does happen, but that's much less common.
Are those, just for clarification, are those thresholds by us or the water board?
Those are in the policy from the water board. Yep.
I just have a question, going back to the plant pellet and the compost, it's attractive, it's help, generate, so we got the one that is like belt grass and wood problem. And in the last 12 months, we've seen it explode before you know. So in terms of maintenance of that, how does that even can fit into all this, and just leave it up to whoever is looking at it.
So, maintenance plans have been tricky because everything gets maintained on a different interval. What I can tell you is that we do also have a once-a-year inspection requirement. So every project that has been permitted through this set of regulations has to report back to the county once a year and tell us how things are looking.
So is that something that you perform that checkers?
Yeah, we check to make sure. You know, Caltrans, part of the reason that they've been so aggressive in incorporating compost is it's been shown to keep down weeds and invasives and really encourage natives to pick up. So we're hopeful that you know, that's why we're taking that guidance from Caltrans District 5 is because it's proven successful. Yes.
A tiny question, are you building the 10-year storm or the 50-year storm? What is the design criteria in terms of the engineering you're putting in?
It's the 85th percentile or 95th percentile event. So, and it varies depending on where you are in the county. And then there's some peak runoff management requirements that I think go up through the 10-year storm.
Up to a 10-year storm?
Up to a 10-year.
So perhaps one last question, and then anybody got one? Greg?
I have one more question about pavers.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So is there certain square footage they have to use in relationship to the other impervious areas? Because I'm pretty familiar with pavers and how they work. So I'm just kind of curious about them.
It's different for every project.
Okay.
So it really depends on the sizing for the amount of runoff they're trying to capture, how much other impervious area there is. It's really at the project's discretion. So we've seen some projects come in with 4 parking spaces of pervious pavers, and we've seen some projects come in with 100 parking spaces.
Well, I've seen, for instance, pavers be very worn out within 15 years. On heavy water surfaces.
Yeah, and that's one of the considerations we have now is vehicle loading too. And not wanting them in fire lanes or where the trash truck is coming in and out, right? Heavy
Yeah,
vehicle
and I
loading.
see that where I live, right? Got a lot of experience with pavers.
Yeah, and so that's a consideration that's been factored into our guidebook, because, you know, we've seen them specified for drive aisles, and that's really where they take a lot of wear and tear, especially if the trash trucks coming in and out.
Very good, thank you.
Greg?
Yeah, that paver thing that would come with under the compaction of what the pavers are going to put on. I mean, to me, this just seems like an elaborate septic system. Did they look at deep pits versus horizontal drainage, which is something that's used to take up less space?
Oh,
It
right.
Stores the same amount of water and is completely solid with the size of rock you have to use. So you're dispersing a lot more water in a smaller place. And a lot of this is naturally done on ranches, with the alluvial areas being your storm areas that recharge your basins and stuff. As far as that pressure treated, every deck just about is pressure treated wood is being rained on a regular basis. So they're not gonna stop selling that, otherwise you'd have to replace your deck every year.
Yeah. Yeah, the gravel beds that are going in underneath these pavers vary a lot in depth and in size. They can be quite deep as a structural section and to hold that water in the pore space.
This is basically for commercial construction areas and stuff.
Any other thoughts? Anything online, Joey?
I see them.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll have the link sent out for the final draft as soon as it's posted.
Very good.
Thank you.
What's the deadline for comments?
We are on hold for specific timing until we get feedback from the water board, but we will get that to you, the deadline for comments and the link to the document as soon as it's.
But from now, it's like months.
It's probably
Month or two.
a month, probably about 4 weeks.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you, Ann.
All right.
And beautiful skirt.
Item 4 then, review and discuss proposed San Luis Obispo County flood control water conservation district budget 24-25. Courtney, you can rip it.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. It's that time of year again for the annual review of what we intend to submit for the flood control zone general budget, which is a very small portion of the countywide tax. And I just wanted to go through what we do with it, in accordance with the board's approved budget management policy, what our priority efforts are, which you get updates every time in the update section. And we can look at the numbers, what the numbers look like for next year's budget and what we're looking at going ahead. So quickly to go over the budget policy, which is in your packet. Zone General just doesn't have enough money to fund all the projects and maintain them over time forever. So we kind of had to focus in on understanding water and flood related conditions, water supply and flood related conditions, where we want those to be, if we're having problems in certain areas, or if we need more supply. What are those goals to try to get to where we want to be conditions wise? And then how can we get there? So looking at different solutions, and then working with communities that would benefit from those solutions to see if they want to implement them, which means funding them over time and setting up any institutional structures such as a zone of benefit to then implement those projects and maintain them over time. So that's sort of kind of the process our team goes through with communities and or agencies, partners that want to try to solve problems. So looking at what we need now, resiliency, insurance, and then what's coming in the future. So trying to look at it all in an integrated fashion. So our first priority with the budget is, again, since it's a countywide allocation, looking at regional programs and strategies. This is things like our countywide data collection for hydrology, our rain and stream gauges, looking at our countywide master water report. That's our countywide picture of current and future supply and demand picture, things like that. Our second funding priority is any financing needs from some of our other water related flood control district or county services. So we're kind of the parent fund to help the zones when they need it. And then our third funding priority is if we have additional funds, looking at helping specific studies in specific areas throughout the county as they come up. So that's sort of the approach that's outlined in the budget policy. And then just to further describe kind of the work we do, we've kind of categorized it into 4 programs. We have our overall general management, working with the Water Resources Advisory Committee, developing the budget, things like that, answering information requests from the public. And then we have the regional programs that I talked about, like our countywide master water report, our integrated regional water management program, our sub-regional efforts where we look in specific areas and try to look at specific solutions. And then our data collection program where we go around countywide for our stream, rain, and groundwater and unmanaged groundwater basins. This is our team. Our division works on flood control zone general efforts, but we also work on zone 11A, which is the lower portion of the Arroyo Grande Creek, the levees. So that came over from water utilities division to our division. And then we also have been overseeing zone 9, which is the San Luis Obispo Creek watershed. But both those zones, zone 1A and zone 9, are specific zones of benefit, but the zone general is sort of the countywide parent fund. So altogether, this is the team we have to cover all those efforts. The board recently approved 2 new positions because we were going back and forth between flood control and water supply and drought. And the board thought it was, yes, important to work on both at the same time. So we were able to have 2 new positions approved, yet to be filled, but we hope to fill them soon so that the folks that were working on like desal and Salinas Dam opportunities and et cetera can now go back to that. And the new folks can then carry forward on all our zone 1A efforts and any other kind of flood related efforts as they come up year to year. So our priority efforts, and then going back to just zone general, is making sure that we're continuing to work on any existing contractual obligations and commitments. For example, if we got a grant agreement to a regional study, then we're going to carry forward with that study. Any kind of direction the board gives, we need to weigh that. making sure we're eligible for grants, if there's a certain effort we need to do to make sure that then we qualify. Some grants will say your project needs to be in an IRWM plan, or it needs to be in a regional stormwater plan. So we'll need to make sure that we work with any of those folks to make sure it's in our documents. And then any kind of flood and drainage planning efforts. And I think I mentioned this last year, there's a renewed interest in flood and drainage solutions. So we've been working with various communities on understanding what the conditions are and what it would take to address those conditions, and seeing whether or not they want to move forward as a community in funding these efforts. So just in a nutshell, and a lot of this has been ongoing updates for your committee. These are more longer term planning efforts, but we finished an upgrade to our monitoring program. So now that we have a better transmission system. So now we're kind of going to focus more on just continuing to improve our data collection program and access to data. We're continuing our IRWM grant administration. Our last funding round 2 for Prop 1. I'm going to get going on the agreements for that. And get that funding coming from the state in the form of reimbursements. We're continuing with our master water report update, which again, you've had presentations on our data and information management system. So our effort to make this a living document, that's going well. We have kind of one water planning area, just about ready for the show, and then looking at countywide. So we're excited about how that's going. We did get a grant for desal planning. It's been a little bit on hold. Kind of the grant took a while too, so it kind of worked out. It opened up some space for helping with flood management efforts, but that's going to get going. They're going to work on getting that grant agreement in place, and our next step is to look for a consultant to move forward on that. Similar with Salinas Dam planning, the state included an allocation for a feasibility study to look at opportunities to optimize the use of that in coordination with the city of San Luis and everyone else public process. So we're going to get going on that as well, as soon as we can get those vacancies filled. And then our organizational needs, big story was Zone 1A, Rio Grande Creek Channel levee storm repairs were very expensive. It's a reimbursement based application process through FEMA to then get reimbursed for these projects that we did and are doing to restore capacity and improve the integrity of the levees prior to this coming storm season. We made it through this storm season. There was a little bit of damage that we need to go back and repair, but very expensive projects that luckily Zone General had reserves for. And so right now, that is out to Zone 11A as a cash flow loan until the FEMA reimbursements come in over the next couple of years. So that's kind of the big story with reserves for Zone General. And then you'll see some pass-through accounting where IRWM grant funding comes to the flood control district, and then the projects get an allocation. So that kind of comes in and out. So you'll see that in our organizational needs priority part of the budget. And then each water planning area, again, just trying to make sure that we're understanding conditions in all the different areas of the county. We have different water planning areas so that we can start to track, what our monitoring programs are doing in those areas, any kinds of studies for those areas. 2 particular ones I wanted to mention was Adelaida study is still ongoing. That's a partnership with the USGS to look at conditions out in the Adelaida area, which is west of the city of Paso and Templeton. So we've got their contract is wrapping up. And so we're going to have to start to talk about next steps, whether might be just continuing to monitor because we've only had a few years of data collection. So maybe a few more and then moving forward on that. So that's the upcoming decision. And then Avila drainage issue, we got some recovery plan funding to look at the flooding that happens in that parking lot and around the homes and businesses in downtown Avila. So continuing to work on solutions for that. So those are some examples of specific areas that we're studying. So that's kind of the words. The rest is the numbers. So I included some documents just to help with the details, the summary of the numbers, the budget management policy itself, and more, if you want to read more about our work programs, there's a description. One thing I keep an eye on is labor versus operations. So it does take a lot of people to coordinate all this work and go after grants and then hire the consultants and manage the consultants to implement the grants. So most of our use of the annual allocation to zone general is the labor to move those things forward. And then we have another allocation of that goes towards the operation of our collection, data and information gathering programs, all our gauges, for example, and then repairs, and then any kind of special studies that we need. A lot of times you need local match for any grants. So if it's like a 75-25, and some of the 25% can come out of that. So just something I want to keep an eye on. I can't keep hiring people, basically asking for more staff because we got to keep an eye on that. There is in the policy, which was important this last year, we had set 3.1 million as a minimum reserve for emergencies. Luckily, we had even above that because we needed even more to help Zone 1A cover the cost of those projects. So a lot of that is out. So you'll see in the numbers that we are not going to be hitting until we find out year end how much we did not spend this fiscal year and we'll roll over. We're anticipating that we won't hit that 3.1 million emergency reserve this next fiscal year until we get the FEMA reimbursements to then replenish it. So it's pretty conservative in the approach this year, trying to just match the annual revenue to expenses we anticipate. So kind of minimized any kind of special studies included in the budget for now, other than the ones we've committed to already, like desal study. But that, once we get to year end and it closes out, then we'll see what our fund balance is and kind of revisit the health of the budget and keep an eye on that going forward. That's but when we do have the reserves, again, that's just another example of how they can be used as cash flow loans or for special studies. Reserves are kind of one-time money. It's not the annual amount we get every year. It's our savings account. That's it in a nutshell, and I can answer questions and go over the numbers.
Thank you. Wonderful report. Looking at the line for Salinas Dam expansion retrofits feasibility, it appears that a lot more is budgeted this year than in the ensuing years. And I thought I heard in your narrative, you were basically saying an effort was going to be kicked off or pick up rather than lessen. It's not necessarily a project that I'm pitching for, but if, I guess my first question, kind of for clarification, is some of the money in this year's budget actually going to be spent in ensuing years because it hasn't been spent this year? And then basically just a special concern. The downstream inundation risk areas at risk of inundation in the event of dam failure from the decades old EIR done by the city are clearly hugely obsolete, and that work desperately needs to be redone if there's any thought of doing a project like that. The assumed highest level of the reservoir was 101%, and in the previous rainfall season it got up to 109%. And also, I believe the sort of not particularly noticed historic dam downstream that I think can contain a couple of thousand acre feet. I don't think that was even accounted for in the previous EIR. And if it were to also fail when, as a consequence of the upstream dam failing at 109%, basically the number of people at risk downstream may be considerably greater than current documents account for. And so if anything goes forward, that definitely needs to be part of it, because that, either that's an unacceptable risk, or it can be mitigated, and then at what expense?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the first question, I tried to explain it in the staff report. We included the revenue we anticipate for coming from the state, from the allocation for this feasibility study in this fiscal year, and so it'll roll over. But so that's why you don't see it in this coming fiscal year.
So
It's already
passing this budget would still allow that money to be spent
Yes,
when it comes, even if it's after June 30th.
yes.
Thank you.
And then the second question, I know the Army Corps did a updated risk analysis. So I'll have to go back and look and see what methodology they used. And see if they updated the approach from what you're talking about in the EIR. And see if that can be made available. And then, yes, going forward, understanding the production in that watershed, not just on history, but what projections, with climate change and other things going forward will be a big part of that. And I think the city's done some more recent yield studies. So yes, part of that effort will be gathering all that information and making sure we have a solid methodology for analyzing options.
Thank you.
Do you have any staff time budgeted for running a big count on what's going on in the Panama Mesa? With the Board of Supervisors and their data reserve, there was an issue where Golden State was up against NCSD. And then at the end of one of our sessions on data, we had, I think, Northern Cities writing a letter objecting to our letter to the board. And there are people on the Mesa who I believe are served by Golden State, agricultural users and people like that, who don't seem to have anybody looking after them. That is, and I'm curious, is the county in any way running observation and heard on all these potential lawsuits that are brewing down there?
So since it's an adjudicated basin, it's under the purview of our groundwater sustainability director. So that's a managed basin. So that might be a question for Blaine. But in terms of water supply strategies, we would be considering needs in that area, the two management areas of the Santa Maria Basin, in like our desal study, for example. So there is kind of connectivity there, and also representing what's going on in our countywide master water report. So there are some ways in which we're understanding conditions again, but we don't have like a regulatory role or a driving role in that area.
Courtney, I have a question on the management regional services and commitments. A similar caveat with Eric and the Salinas Dam, not particularly in favor at this point of desalination. But there's a big bunch of money here for feasibility. Now, what comes under that? You talked about hiring consultants. Is this going to include an EIR in the entire review process? What is included in feasibility, and what kind of ground rules are laid for what's feasible and not, and who decides that feasibility? And what there's a lot of money up here in front. So
are you looking at the desal one?
The desal feasibility and all of that line there. I have issues with desal to start with, and then see this big bunch of money. What's that going to be spent on?
So that is documenting all the different ideas, looking at our whole coastline. It's basically, in a nutshell, I'll go into more detail, laying out all the different ideas and then kind of methodically applying criteria. Part of the process is publicly identifying those criteria that should be used to vet the different options, to kind of narrow it down to the ideas that best meet the criteria. Now, a big driver of that criteria is going to be the state coastal commission, the ocean plan policies and the guidance document that the state water board did. So that's going to drive a lot of the criteria discussion. But so that's, the analysis and developing all the materials then to walk through it with the public. developing the stakeholder engagement plan, having that vetted, is all a part of that effort, to try to go through first, like, decide how we're gonna decide, publicly decide how we're gonna decide to narrow it down, and then go through that vetting process publicly, and then try to get to those 2 or 3 ideas that seem most feasible. And I imagine you'll have one project that says, okay, it'll be feasible if you hit X, Y, and Z conditions, like you can really demonstrate your need in the future, you've optimized conservation, recycled water, the hydrology, changing hydrology and way we can use reservoirs changes that way in the future. So at least we'll have it ready to go should those like kind of triggers hit in that time frame. Or it could show that the need is not, you know, so we because of X, Y, and Z, and this one meets all the state's criteria, there's a good place for, you know, subsurface intakes, and it's already disturbed, or in the need is demonstrated because they've already done conservation, recycled water, and there's still need. You know, that's the process of vetting all of that. So that's how it adds up.
You're vetting it to see if it's feasible, or if it's getting, directing this to happen, and which is the most feasible manner to do it.
Could be either. Yeah, that was what the outcome would be, is whether there is any feasible sites and any feasible, like, demonstrated needs.
So you do not have a project with a project description for environmental review at this point, but you could need to or not, depending.
Yes.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Margie, on one of your earlier slides, it indicated, you know, that your fiscal year, upcoming fiscal year is based on a number of four items, and one of them was Board of Supervisors direction. And I was wondering if you could talk about what type of direction you are getting from the Board of Supervisors, and if that has changed.
Yeah, I'd say the most recent one was, yes, work on flood and water supply at the same time. So that, so we've now set up our team to be able to, once we find people, to then move forward on both at the same time. So that's an example of making sure we're allocating budget for both efforts. It's another example. Anytime they approve going after a grant, or award, getting, you know, accepting the award for a grant, that's kind of what I mean too, is when they have made that commitment, then we are committed to then carrying out the work. So just in general, the things we look for when we're looking at, okay, what do we need to make sure we allocate funding for?
Any other questions?
I have a question about the Laurel Grande Creek levee repair. So, as I recall, and I could be wrong, so you can correct me that, I recall in 20 years that the levee's broken and flooded in that Oceana Spur Lane area over there. And as I recall, that area is considered kind of like a flood zone area. But if the levee keeps breaking, how does the county address the levee in itself and the breakage of it, and how you can manage it without it breaking a little bit better, I guess is my point.
Yeah.
So what is going on with that piece?
Yeah. So FEMA, in getting funds to do repairs, you can apply for hazard mitigation. So you can either replace it in kind, put it back just the way it was, or if there's new standard for how you do things, then you can apply for reimbursement as a hazard mitigation. And so that's what we're doing with the levees, where we want to do these hydraulic barriers, these cutoff walls. Yeah, so we're basically building a wall down the center line in vulnerable areas instead of just packing the soil back in.
Right, that's what I was wondering about.
Yeah, so we are going after
Yeah,
that.
it didn't make sense. Repeat the same.
Exactly.
Huh?
Walls built.
Well, yes, true.
Yes.
Picture those.
Yeah, and it's still just 10 or 20 year capacity, south 10, north 20. So we are also taking advantage of all the funding opportunities for studies that came out. And we're going after a study to look at the alternatives for that next level of flood protection. Is there any other options for ways to manage, flood water? As for like a future project. So that will be, again, another big study that,
But FEMA is really the one that pays for this dam levee repair, it's not
Yes.
the county.
it's a 75% is FEMA. And so luckily, we were also awarded a state allocation of funding to help with that 25% cost match for that project.
So when you said 10 to 20, you mean a 10 to 20 year event, so
Yeah.
there's like a 5 and 10% chance.
Right, yeah, there's
One
a
in 5
percentage,
years, a 10-year chance, so it's not gonna work.
right, that it would overflow. Yeah, it's pretty low.
Yeah.
But Zone 1A has an advisory committee, and if you're interested in the variety of creek levies, they meet quarterly. I think next one's in July.
Any other questions online, Jody?
See now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on then to.
You didn't get me far, but that's.
Oh. Item number 5, ongoing updates.
Do we take an action?
Oh.
Oh.
No, it's just.
Maybe that's our cause.
I thought it was.
I do remember in past years, the WRAC has made a recommendation as to whether the board should approve it, but I guess if it's not on our agenda, that won't let us do it.
It's on, we have consider actions in the item. I would agree. I think we normally do that as well, but
Yeah, I kind of left it open. But yeah, I did add consider actions. So that if you wanted, the committee did want to opine on it.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion then for support for the budget.
I will move approval with the incorporation of our questions and comments.
Is there a
In other
second?
words, we can't approve the budget, but we recommend approval with incorporation of our questions and comments.
I'm not sure how to. I mean, I second recommending, approval of the budget. As a motion, I feel like staff has heard our comments and I didn't know that there's any thing.
As long as they're transmitted, if staff is going to say, WRAC approved the budget, if staff could also mention the issues that came up, refer to our minutes or whatever.
That's reasonable.
Is that acceptable? Okay. Just for your second is. Do you understand that?
But we can do that. Yeah, I see.
All right, any comments on Eric's motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? All right.
And now we can afford.
Thank you for considering it.
Thank you, Court. Thank you. We'll move on to item 5 then, ongoing updates. I'll just go through them one by one. Anybody speak up if you have questions or comments. Rain and reservoir report. The drought updates. The ground.
Move on the rain and reservoir reports. We have noticed that the meteorologists said that we actually have more atmospheric rivers this year than last year, but they had less water in them. But when you're thinking about what your rain is going to look like, if we're going to be increasing more and more atmospheric rivers, might be worse things to know.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's probably dependent on the sea surface temperature at the origin of the river. You can get the formation, but it can be juicier or less juicy. And I don't know, do you see a trend line in any of this?
Yes.
Short answer.
More, just like you see it.
Thank you, David. Eric. Drought updates. Groundwater basin management efforts. Greg.
Thank you. I know that I think everyone knows that the annual reports came out for the different GSA areas and different basins. And one of the problems that happened, I kept asking, I'm on the technical advisory for expanded monitoring for the plane. And it took longer than it should to get our reports done. None of the draft report or the final report went to any GSA board for public comment or approval, which is Brown Act violation. So the only public comments took place at the cooperative committee meeting, which is not the boards and has no jurisdiction without going back to the boards. And the only comments that were posted were 14 comments that I made, which made changes from the draft into the original document that was sent to the DWR. And some of those there's a lack of 3,909 acre feet of space in the Nacimiento pipeline. There's 600 feet of pipeline that's washed out that the temporary repair is going to take a few years to fix. And those can't get there in Nasi water right now until that temporary fix takes place. And then it'll be another 4 or 5 years before the permanent fix gets placed. So over the last 7 years of these reports, over 10,000 acre feet of Nacimiento water has not been put to beneficial use, which would have saved 70,000 acre feet of groundwater. Some of the other things are noticing the areas where we were looking at the shallow well issues and what's around them. There's up to 60, almost 50 acre foot ponds in those adjoining areas that are filled with groundwater on a regular basis. And there's more evaporation off those ponds than there was by letting the people use the 25 acre feet of water that was denied in the new planning ordinance. So the evaporation off of those needs to be considered with pond covers that are not salt. They're moving parts that will reduce that by 98%. We also, I wish Jamie hadn't left, have a problem in the Atascadero Basin with 3 contaminated wells, PFAS. And they have on their website for the people that they're serving water to not to drink the water. And on April 10th, here just a few weeks ago, the EPA came out with new standards on PFAS. So everybody that's using recharge from wastewater close to wells has to be looking at this. And there's only a couple of places that make filter systems that can be delivered for those kind of things. They're called forever chemicals. There's only about 15,000 of them from everything that's being dumped in more areas that would be more like towns or cities or stuff. And even San Miguel just got a grant to work on their wastewater thing, but they haven't incorporated any of this. And the other night at the San Miguel meeting, they said it's going to take $25 to $30 million to do the upgrade they want to do. They have 900 water meters to pay for this stuff. I don't know whether they think they're going to get the money or not. But these are just a few of the different things. I'll skip real fast down to state water and then I'll be quiet. Somebody else. We got state water. We should be getting 100% this year. We're not yet. I don't know why not, because all the reservoirs are way over full and they're going to waste it if they don't use it. But when the county lists, we get 25,000 acre feet for the county for table A water. The only place we can carry it over is at San Luis Reservoir, which is by Los Banos. 15,000 of that is paid for, that's unsubscribed by the rest of the taxpayers. 10,000 is paid for by the subcontractors in South County. County hasn't used the 100 acre feet they've got available for them in Shannon for 3 years and only used a small portion in the previous few years before that. So they have not been putting that water to beneficial use when it's been available. And the unsubscribed part should not be mixed in with the subscribed part. They need 5, they pay for 10. The buffer is not big enough because the state doesn't deliver. You can't take, exchange, or transfer from the other part without compensating for that. And the grand jury has already stated to that fact. And in 2008 and 14, when they sold state water, they put it in the wrong account and they used $6.5 million of the taxpayers' money for 10 years until they got told to move it in the right account. And they never put the interest for the 10 years on that 6.5 million. So I have a lot of concerns with what's being mismanaged instead of what's being managed. Whether it be the Nacimiento water, not looking at the possibilities, if you're gonna pass over looking at mixing their wastewater with Nazi water to put it on irrigation. Well, if you're not gonna take care of the PFAS problem, you're gonna contaminate all kinds of other areas, which there's lawsuits going on right now with that, because they're using the dried waste to mix with other things as fertilizer on fields and finding out that this is creating a problem over basis. So some people might not like diesel. Diesel is cleaner and it takes half the cost to clean that versus using the wastewater. No matter what, the wastewater has to be cleaned to a certain percentage to make it safe. But we have to start looking into some of these other systems that are available, whether it be under your counter yourself or be at the place that's delivering your water. Right now they're mixing, I mean, this stuff is bigger than parts per trillion, not even parts per billion. So 4 parts per trillion, which isn't even a thimbleful or a little size of a pencil bed, can cause a problem of stuff in your water system. So they're blending their wells that aren't contaminated with the wells that are contaminated to get below that percentage. And I don't want to see that happen in any other communities than what's going on there. But there's other areas. Another one, Templeton takes from where they dump their wastewater and where they add their Nacimiento water, it takes 2.5 to 3 years for it to get to their well. Well, I'm wondering, are they checking what they're dumping, even though it takes so long to get there? And after all these years of dumping in the same place, this is where you have a large amount of concentration because it's always been dead and we've never had to look for these people. So I'm just bringing that in just as information.
Thank you, Greg. A lot to
Thank
think
you.
about there. All right, anything else on groundwater basin? Yes, Andy.
Yeah, it's here in the update, but on the San Luis Obispo basin, I did want to just point out that we had the city as a GSA and the county as a GSA, and we developed the plan as a GSC with 3 at-large members. And so now that the plan has been approved, it was approved last year, but we did have our final meeting on March 18th and we to dissolve the GSC, the commission. And so going forward, that public opportunity is no longer, anyway, don't look for those meetings anymore. So if there are projects, they'll go directly to their jurisdiction. So projects, disaster, whatever, will be in the city of Slow, and then the county is managing their own, and then we'll coordinate the compliance reports, the regular.
Very good. Anything else on groundwater? Christine.
Just following up, the PFAS is out there near the airport from the all red. The fire extinguishing material that they use is filled with it, and training, they still use it. It goes into buckets or barrels. But I found out the last zone 9 meeting that this airport is in the county, but it's connected to the city's water and sewer. So all of that stuff is going and being dumped into the city sewer system. And the reverse osmosis under your sink will take out the PFAS, but that's the only thing. And so wells will need to be updated with major RO systems in order to provide clean drinking water. But with that going into our groundwater out by the airport and then back into maybe the set sewage system, some of it goes into the creek, some of it goes into reclaimed water. I've asked for some investigative journalists to do some further digging on that so that we can find out more.
Thank you. All right. Moving on then to flood control zones. Anything? Integrated regional water management. Yes.
Courtney mentioned earworms, IRWM, in her presentation, and that they had recently completed and our agenda package shows that the agreements for round two were completed in December of 2023. And over under the in progress chart which we were given, it shows that Central Coast Blue would be eligible for $1 million under that grant. And there's been a lot of press lately about both, I believe, Grover Beach and Royal Brandy deciding to not participate. And I'm wondering if the earworm monies are in jeopardy, or will they be reallocated? Or if the withdrawal of those communities from the Central Coast Food Project would impact that grant.
Yeah, Linda, I'll answer that question for you. So that is, that's a good question and good observation. We're, I just closed out the round one agreement. So now this is why it's been a little delay. It's working on round one. It's all closed out now. Final invoices sent in. So we'll be starting the round two agreements, and you know, I've yet to have conversations with the Central Coast Blue Project partners and their team about, you know, what has been out in the news and what's been released by them, you know, as far as press releases and things. And so there are conversations to have, and if we need to do anything, you know, related to that, it does come through the committee here. So before it goes to the board, but any changes to grant amounts or projects has to go through the board, through, you know, reactivating the regional water management group, which comes to then to the WRAC, to the board. So if anything is going to be proposed or changed or anything like that, it'll be out in the public and come through here, this committee as well. So those conversations haven't started yet. Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Anything else on IRWM? Not then. Master Water Report updates. State Water Project. Desalinization. County Water Programs, Policies and Ordinances. And lastly, opening reporting on water conservation opportunities and information. Okay, hearing none, then we'll move on to item 6. Oh, Eric, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm getting ready for item 6.
Oh, okay,
There.
you're geared up, yes.
Okay.
Future agenda items, yes, Eric.
And I don't think this is necessarily for next month. I don't think the information will be there, but it might be right around September or October. My understanding is that various publicly owned treatment works around the county, including Los Osos and others, and I know Los Osos is under County Public Works now in many ways, are planning on a different destination for their sewage sludge, and that the city of Paso Robles has been going through a land use process to accommodate some very unspecified fate for this stuff on acreage near the landfill, the Paso Robles landfill. And at present, I have not been able to pin down any definition of a project of exactly what would be done with the sludge once it gets there. In fact, the last I heard was, well, we're kind of waiting to see what we get grants for. In any event, this is a situation I would like to keep tabs on. Apparently, the land use process is happening independently of an anticipation of some sort of a project, whether it's waste to energy, whether it's, you know, I don't think they're talking about using it as an actual land application site, but I don't know that it has been convincingly dismissed as such either. But I think what we should do is maybe let folks in Paso Robles know that maybe by fall, we're hoping that they can give us some kind of a complete report on what physically they intend to do with sludge on land in their city or land owned by their city.
Okay, and the nexus to the WRAC is groundwater quality and flood?
It underlies the Paso Robles Basin.
Okay,
And we have acted before on issues relative to sewage sludge. We've taken votes on previous potential policies, and so I think it's very important that we continue our scrutiny of such things.
very well. We can add that as a future agenda item. Any other suggested future agenda items? Right. If not, then we'll move on to item 7. Lost track of my agenda. Public comment for items not on the agenda. Any public comment on items we haven't discussed already? Greg?
I was at the LAFCO meeting here a week or so ago, and there was something that was coming up that I had no idea what it was. When I looked at the agenda package, it didn't tell who was involved. So the San Juan district had somebody from somewhere that wanted to add land to their quote unquote water district. And they were under the impression that that water district could grant them the ability to put in ag wells, which they have no land use authority. Yeah, the county can give you a permit, but there is a hold from the governor on ag wells. But when they disclosed who the landowner was, it was the same company out of Canada that bought a bunch more acreage that spent $98 million buying all the land that Harvard had out there. So they were trying to add to what they were doing. And the disconcerting part is the connection, because there's a lot of Form 700s that have are supposed to show your financial interest with the people that are involved that are representing this company in their land, that are also on that board and also sit on the cooperative group. So the potential for doing business because it benefits you and doesn't benefit the basin is a problem. And the LAFCO board saw this, and it was a receive and file. It wasn't that they were voting on anything. I know there was some letter from Blaine saying, I know you're not going to add wells, but this is part of the problem that I try to explain to them, that, you know, the basin management is supposed to protect the basin. It's not here for these special interest groups or little water districts that benefit their little private groups of people or whatever's going on. It's supposed to benefit the general well-being of the basin as a whole. And this is a problem with the cooperative group that we have there. They're trying to figure out either how to continue or how to change their structure. Like what Andy was talking about, their main goal was to do the GSP. They fulfilled that obligation, and they decided they wanted to impose or they wanted to follow through on things that we were asked to do. But two main things we were asked to do are stormwater capture, the interconnectivity between the surface water and the groundwater, and what we're going to do about the shallow well problem. Instead, they're going up on their private deals to come up with blended water or different things that just benefit themselves and doesn't benefit the basin. So I'm hoping that the board will look at these different things as they come down and see who the players are and follow the money and see what's going on in these things. Even like the Adelaide area, you didn't have problems there a few years ago until they imposed the planning ordinance and people moved more vineyards into outside of the basin area into the watershed area and created problems for those people. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Okay, any other public comment? Right, hearing none, then our next meeting is 5 weeks from today in this room. Enjoy your May, and we'll see everybody then. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Okay.